Today, I'm talking about the issue of immigration, but really, we're talking with an incredibly inspiring young woman named Astrid Melendez, who is a part of that system, who is a part of the issue that keeps coming up. And it really puts a human face and voice to what's happening from within the immigration system. Astrid fled El Salvador when she was 13 years old. She was fleeing death threats in a really dangerous situation. And I understand that the system does need to be reformed. But when you hear this young woman's story and what she had to go through in the only country she ever knew to get to a country she knew nothing about, and then have to learn the language, have to understand the culture, learn the community, and really overcome more obstacles to get to a place where you feel like you have a home. That's what this conversation is all about. Astrid has gone on to become the salutatorian of her senior class this year. She is now going to UCLA to study immigration law in an effort to give back to kids in a similar situation that she found herself in. So it's really an inspiring story. It's a story that happens all too often. And there are voices that are often left out of this conversation about what we do about immigration and about the system. So I think it's really, really important to hear this voice and to hopefully be inspired by Astrid and see that she is a part of a generation who will see a better future for her, for us, and for this nation. So I think there's a lot of hope in this, a lot of inspiration, and a lot of common ground that we can all find. So without further ado, here's my interview with Astrid Melendez. So we are here today with Astrid Melendez. Astrid has an absolutely profound story, and I can't wait to hear from your perspective on what that has been like to come over here and what it means to be in this country, especially now and everything that's going on. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff here, but Astrid, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Of course. So you're a salutatorian in Los Angeles, and you came to this country at 13 years old without even speaking the language. That's quite a feat. Do you feel the weight of that accomplishment, or is it still a little too fresh?
I guess it's still a little too fresh. Like I can't process it still.
Well, it's a huge feat for someone who's born here. So to be able to do that is really incredible. And hats off to you and congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you.
So Astrid, we're talking today because I think your story is one of many who have a shared story that a lot of people in this country don't quite understand and don't really know what it's like to be, quote unquote, an undocumented immigrant. I'd like to start off with what your path to get here. At 13 years old, you fled El Salvador. El Salvador. Did I say that wrong?
No, that's right.
Okay. At 13 years old, you fled El Salvador with violence and death threats and came here, I assume, under Asylum. Can you explain what that was like as a young kid?
Well, it was actually a pretty big deal, I would say. I had my whole life planned out in El Salvador. I was expected to go to college there. I grew up with my grandparents, and everything was fine. But then one day, everything changes, and it's like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, well, as I said, I grew up with my grandparents. I didn't know my mom. She left when I was 3 due to economic struggles. And then one day someone comes to my door asking for money, and it was like, okay, what's gonna happen now? So then, everything was dangerous. So my mom was like, you know what? It's time for you to come. It's not safe for you to be there anymore. And I was kind of confused at the beginning, I would say, because
Yeah.
well, my life was there, but I knew I had to do it for my well-being. So then the journey was around 3 months, and it was a big change when I came here. The environment, the culture, the language, everything was different, and yeah, it was a lot.
Uh, and I certainly want to get into all that. You know, your mom had to leave for economic reasons when you were young. Was that, did she come to the U.S. To be able to support you guys back home?
Yes,
Okay. And are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I have two siblings, one younger sister and a younger brother.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, so that, I mean, that in itself is something that I can't personally comprehend. I mean, and I think a lot of families deal with that out of necessity. And I don't want to gloss over how big that is to not be able to have your parents, your mom, there in really pivotal years. Um, and I'm glad that you were able to be reunited. What was that inciting moment? I know you had mentioned death threats. Like, what was it that happened that caused you to leave the only home you've ever known?
Well, I remember it was a day after I had gotten back from school, and I was watching TV with my grandmother in the living room. And I told her, "Oh, I'm gonna go get snacks." And so I went to the kitchen. And when I got back to the living room, she was outside. She had the door like on her back, like for them to not see me. And there was this man, and he was talking about money and about hurting me if we didn't give him that money. And I was freaking out. And so I ran to the back to my uh, grandpa, and I told him what was happening. And he just told me to go inside. And then after that happened, we had like a little talk, and then I stopped going to school. We had the doors closed all the time. Uh, the first week, I remember I would have to go to my neighbor's house because I couldn't be at my house because they would constantly go and keep asking for the money. And so it got to the point where I realized that I just couldn't keep living like that. That was not even a life. It was
Yeah.
it was just too much.
And obviously, if it's too personal, don't feel like you have to answer this. But like, what were they asking for money for? Is this a gang? What is that?
Yeah, it was okay.
Okay.
Uh, it's because they I guess they found out that my mom was here, and people have this ideal that when you come to the US you have all this money and everything is perfect, when the reality is not. It's not like that. And so they were like, "Oh, we know your mom is there and you have to give us 500 every month, and over there that's a lot of money."
Yeah.
And yeah, they had this ideal that we were rich, and we're not even close to that. So
Of course. Yeah. No, I understand that. Okay. So that makes total sense. So you said it took you 3 months to get over here. What is that journey like? Like, can you describe what it's like to do that and what you have to go through to get here?
well, I guess I don't even know how to do. I don't think there's a word to describe it. It's crazy. You see so many things, you meet so many people. And well, as I said, it took me 3 months. You have to hide. You have to adapt to certain situations. I remember I went around 3 or 4 days without eating, and all I could think of is I have to do this. I can't do it. And then it's also scary because all you can think of is, if I get caught and I go back, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine. And it makes the conversation around immigration so much more human, so much more real. Cause I think people in this country, who are on, you know, one side of this issue tend to demoralize that and tend to take that human element out and just look at it as, oh, someone's trying to come and take what's mine,
Yeah.
which I think is absurd anyways. But I think if more people heard the circumstances in these stories around people of why they're coming here, they would maybe understand a little bit more. Um, so and we will get further down the road, I promise you, but I think this is really important. And so you get here and you see your mom for the first time in how many years?
10.
Wow. So is that elation? Are you super happy? Is it weird? Is it like, what's the emotion there?
It was a mix of emotions because I didn't remember her at all.
Mm,
The only memory I have is one time she took me to this restaurant and she told me that she wasn't hungry, but she was. She just couldn't afford to buy something for the both of us.
mm,
And that's the only thing I can remember. When I saw her, the first time I saw her, it was at the airport because I was like in the house for undocumented kids for your process to like happen, and then they send you to your family. And I had a bag, and I threw the bag, and I started running. And as I was hugging her, I just couldn't believe it. It was,
oh,
yeah, it was a really happy moment.
that's really, really nice. That's good to hear. Um, so okay, so you're labeled with undocumented. The minute you get in here, you get this scarlet letter. What does that mean to you to be an undocumented immigrant?
I guess some people see it as a bad thing, but I've always been kind of part of it because although some people think about it like, oh, they came here to steal this, to steal that. Why can't they do it the right way? Or, so many things. But it's more than that. It's deeper than that because being undocumented means you go through so many things, through so many struggles, hardships, but you find a way to overcome those obstacles and become a better version of yourself. So it's like you're a strong person. It makes you different, it makes you unique, and it's not something bad.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. Um, you said you just brought a couple issues up about like the counter argument, right? And we hear that all the time here. I would love, like, what do you say to the people who say get in line, whatever this imaginary line is? And what do you say to people who say you're getting something for free, you're ruining the country, you're stealing our jobs? This vitriol against any immigration, right? What do you say to people that think that?
Well, I guess they have to do research about it because doing it the right way takes a long time, and sometimes the circumstances force you to look for alternatives. Well, I was put in this situation where I couldn't wait. I couldn't afford to wait 10 years to be able to come here because it wasn't possible.
Yeah,
So you just have to kind of put yourself in the person's shoes to understand what it's like living in a country where you're at your house but you don't feel safe, where
yeah.
you go to school, you don't feel safe.
Especially as a kid. I mean, kids
Yeah,
should be kids, and I have a daughter and I try to, insulate her from certain things that she will have exposure to. Um, but she doesn't need it at 5, right? And I think that case is the same, and not everybody affords that luxury. And I think that's missed on people who have privilege and opportunity in this country, maybe without realizing it. Um, so I'm glad to hear you say those things. I think it's vitally important for people to listen to that. Um, and that also makes me think about, when you think of immigration reform and you think about a broken system and how to fix it, I feel like, and I don't know, I'm obviously not a policy wonk in that regard, but I feel like it's starts there with what you're talking about again, humanizing the situation and listening to people's stories of why. Because it's one thing if you're coming from a country and you just want to go to another country and change things up, great, like let's but not everyone has that. So when you're fleeing for your life, literally, sometimes you have to take measures that aren't favorable to anybody. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I think it's important. um so and one thing on that before we go move on a little bit here, but on the immigration system, do you have thoughts on that, of like, how much do you know about asylum and about immigration law? And I know you're interested in studying law. um how can we fix this system? Because I think that solution needs to come from people who have been affected by it.
I guess just being more understanding about the situation. I'm currently with two processes, asylum and juvenile. Uh, I've been here for almost 5 years and I still have nothing. And as I was going through my asylum process, they ask you for so many like proof, like, oh, prove to me that you went through this. The thing is that when you're going through that, you don't think about, oh, let me take a picture.
Let
Oh,
me
let me get
document the
it.
crimes. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And so I went to this interview about a year ago, and I got the thing denied. So I had to go to court and fight for them to believe what I went through. And what the man told me, he was like, oh, it's not believable. And to me, it just seems, it's not, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Because,
what was
or
he thinking? Were you trying to game the system at
uh-huh,
13 and take over like Oracle or something? Like what's the
exactly.
I don't understand.
Or they ask you for like police records and stuff like that, but what they don't understand is that over there you can't go to the police and be like, oh, so this is happening at my house, because it literally gets you killed. You The system is broken, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times the police are part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um all right. So you go through hell, you get here, you reunite with your mom, you now start integrating into American life. Um, Talk about that. Like, what's it like to not speak the language, to probably not know your surroundings, not understand your peers? That's a scary feeling. What was that like for you?
You just said it. It was scary. My first day of school, it was in eighth grade, and over there, even like the little things over there, you dress a certain way, right? And over here it's like completely different. I remember I had this backpack that was like blue, like this light blue, and everyone was looking at me like, oh my god, what is she wearing? And I was just like, and well, I didn't understand anything. My classes, I had to move from one classroom to a different classroom, and over there you just stayed in the same classroom. You go either like in the morning or in the afternoon, and over here it's like the whole day. So that was really exhausting, I would say. um Also, there's like discrimination even among your own people. I was in this class called ELD for kids that don't speak English, and we would get categorized as the Spanish kids, and people would come to us and be like, oh my god, you should go back, this and that and stuff like that. And it's like, we basically share the same stories, maybe
Yeah.
you didn't went through it, but your parents did.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem that not so many people talk about.
Hmm. The peer to peer, the other people who are in the
Mhm.
same. Yeah. Um, and did you experience that a lot? And did that continue?
Yeah, I continued until I was able to kind of defend myself in English,
Hmm.
and then it kind of stopped.
Huh.
Um, yeah, in high
So,
school it was different, I would say, because you're older. I guess you're more mature. You don't really pay attention to what other people are doing. But middle school was kind of crazy. Yeah.
yeah, and that's I think that's more of an age thing than anything. And this country's probably worse than others, but I remember middle school is not easy no matter what. So I can only imagine adding other complications like that onto it. Um, so that's a tough struggle. Um, and as you go on, it's not really the blue backpack anymore, right? It's more
Yeah.
profound differences, right? And things that have bigger consequences, but still those years shape you, I think, as you move forward. um so how long was it before you really mastered the language? Because it sounds to me like you already were able to use the language to defend yourself as almost like a weapon, right, to protect yourself. um did Is that maybe why you accelerated in learning English out of survival?
Yeah, I would say that, because the program usually takes you 5 years to complete,
Hmm.
5 4 years, but it took me a year and a half, because I said, you know what, I went through a lot in my country. I don't want to go through it again here. Like I had to find a way to adapt to whatever's happening here. So I started going to touring, reading, writing, trying to better myself up every day. And at the end of freshman year, I was able to pass the exam. So yeah.
That's great. And then it sounds like from there you were just never looking back. It's it's not easy to be to become a salutatorian, and to become a mentor and to be involved in all these other programs. Can you talk about some of your accolades? I know that there are very many of them. So can you talk through some of your achievements?
Well, I guess I would start by mentioning Europe. Um, this program, I signed up for it, but I never really went to meetings because I used to be really shy back then. I wouldn't talk to people. I would get extremely nervous. But then one day, I guess I just decided that it was time to put myself out there, and I started going to meetings, getting involved, and then opportunities came my way, right? And so I took every as much as I could. I became a mentor. Then eventually, I became a college ambassador, and I started founding like clubs and stuff like that to be able to kind of get involved and using my story as a way to inspire people. And yeah.
And what is kind?
So when I came here, as I said, I have two processes open right now. And so for you to be able to go to court, you have to find a lawyer, and that's expensive. Thankfully, this organization, Kind, they contacted my mom and they offer their services for free. And so we were like, oh, that's good. So we went, and it's a nonprofit organization. They offer their services to kids who came by themselves to the country, and they help them get their papers together. And as I said, it's for free. You don't have to pay for anything at all.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And is that part of what inspired you to get into law? Because I know you want to study immigration law and kind of give back. Is that part of what pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, I would say so, because before they contacted my mom was really struggling because, as I said, getting a lawyer is really expensive. So I remember she was taking extra shifts, and I realized, wow, being undocumented, it's not just being undocumented, but there's so many more things that come with it. And I also realized that besides Kind, my community doesn't really have any other resources. And
Mm.
not every kid is fortunate enough to get those kinds of services. So I realized, you know what? I want to be able to help kids like me, kids that don't really have the support or the help from either an organization or their families or stuff like that.
Just sounds like you really understand what that means to be a part of the community and give back, and not an easy thing to do, even later in life. And that kind of like it brings me to a question of do you feel like you ever had a childhood? And I don't want to assume that you did or didn't. I just feel like all the things you had to go through so young. Did you ever get to be a kid?
Um, I would say yes at points because, well, before things started happening, I had this neighbor. I used to go to her house even before she was born. I'm older than her for like 2 years, I guess. Yeah, and I would go to her house. Her house, we would play, and I used to live in like a little town, so everyone knows everyone. And well, in the afternoons, kids like from the block go outside and play one thing or the other. So I guess, yeah, but it got to a point where I guess I just had to stop being a kid and grow up faster.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I do, I get the sense from your personality that there's so much more ahead, and that I think you can regain a lot of that too. Um, and, provided that this country, gets its shit together, honestly, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
And so has this shaped your political views? Has this made you politically active? I know that there's a lot of outspoken undocumented immigrants, especially people of your age and your, in the Gen Z collective. Um, are you part of that? Do you feel, and I guess, is there a fear of speaking up? I mean, I would imagine if I was in your shoes, I would be a little bit scared of everything that's going around me. Like, what's that like for you?
Well, sometimes I feel like I do hold myself back from, for example, with the Black Lives Matter protests. I wanted to go, but then I started seeing people posting, "Oh, ICE is in there," and I was like, you know what? Like, I can't, I can't put myself in that situation. But I feel like when it comes to social media or talking to people that actually understand my points of view, I do speak up and I do um, kind of explain what it's like being in a certain situation. And yeah.
Good. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, in my lifetime here, you hear things and you hear, well, every 4 years, the immigration, let's reform immigration comes up and then no one does anything. Um, and this is the first time in my life where that really scary, dark, ill-informed point of view around immigration is more prominent. I don't want to give it weight that it doesn't deserve. I don't think it's the majority of the country. I don't think it's as powerful a movement in that direction as it seems. But those kinds of stories are sensationalized, so we hear about them a lot. That said, there's a lot happening on the border that makes me ashamed. Um, so I do think that something needs to happen, and I think voices like yours, in a safe environment, when and if you can, are really important to be part of that conversation. Um, so back to community a little bit. In the States now, what does community mean to you, and what is your community like right now? And I know you said you're going to be going to UCLA. Um, hopefully in person. Who knows at this point? But what is your community like here now?
I would say mostly my school, because LA is a big city, so like you don't really get to interact with, let's say, your neighbors. Um, but when it comes to school, I feel like the community sense is there, especially because, well, my school is mostly Latinx people, so they kind of understand the struggle. We all go through the same thing. We went to an underserved school, so it's like they we both have the same hardships.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so underserved school, in, is it East LA or where? It's West Adams, right?
West Adams, yeah.
Yeah. What are some of those obstacles at your school? What are some of the things that you face or that the school doesn't have a budget for, doesn't have resources, or like where are some of those shortcomings?
Resources and classes. Well, when it comes to resources, we only have what's called the College Center and Gear Up. Those are basically the only two places you can go to when it comes to college applications or opportunities or programs and stuff like that. And yeah, there's nothing much. Like some other school I've seen that they have this or they have that. Especially now, I joined the UCLA group in Facebook, and I see these people talk about, oh, I was involved in this and this, and I'm just like, oh my god, you have that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, we did a focus group months ago with kids your age and from schools all over Southern California. And you totally saw, I mean, this is basically like redlining, at its finest, where there are certain communities that just had no civics taught ever. And then other schools like, yeah, we have our government club and obviously it's Brentwood, right? Like, I mean, you could kind of predict like why and how. And I wish that, across public education, that was more uniform and that people had the same resources, dispersed. So that's obviously a whole nother issue. Um, but I'm glad you're going to UCLA. I'm glad you're going to have access to a school that has so much at your fingertips. And I can just see you, you know, getting your hands dirty and just learning everything you can. I take it that you're the type of person. Uh, I want to ask a personal question because we have a shared friend in Mr. Gomez. He, I don't know whether he wants me to say his name or not, but too bad. He used to be my roommate. He's a dear friend, and he's an incredible human being. Um, what what was that like, your relationship with him as a counselor and helping you along this journey?
Well, he was one of the people that I met first when I got to West Adams. Um, I guess since the beginning, I knew he was gonna make a huge impact in my life. The moment I met him, I wasn't able to communicate myself like fluently still, and I remember he would talk to me, and I would be like, yes, yes, yes for everything, and I would understand like half of it, but I could feel that he believed in me since day one, even when I wasn't able to understand like the things he was saying. But he's been there with resources, um, help. He's he. I guess he's always been there. It's
Yeah.
just a really deep relationship. It's like a role model for me.
That's great. That's great to hear. That means a lot to me to hear that. And he's not alone. I think there's so many educators and counselors out there who have dedicated their lives to helping kids like you get to where they deserve to be and where they work hard as hell to get to. I think having people be able to identify that, foster that, and forward that on, and then people like you end up paying that forward, right? Like going on to study immigration law and to do the things you want to do. um, I think a lot of times it's those mentorships that spark some of that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Um, so a little bit about us and about what we do, and I'd love to get your response, your feedback. But we've kind of built everything on the fact that this country is built on shared differences and about coming together to kind of have a United States. Uh, that doesn't feel as united these days as it should, but I still do believe in finding common ground with people and being able to move the ball forward based on shared interest. I want to see if you believe in that, if your generation believes in that, and if so, where are some of the ways we can make progress?
Um, I guess with things like this, like spaces where you can share your story, your thoughts. Um, I actually really like CommonAlly because I've never had an opportunity to be able to share my story or to talk about it the way we're doing it right now. And it feels really good because you're able to express your thoughts, have a regular conversation just like right now. And I feel like Gen Z, for example, we really we want change. We want uh, things to come together because everything just feels like a mess right now. The things that are happening outside, it's crazy. It feels like we're going back in time,
I know.
and being able to express whatever feelings you're feeling, it's great.
Well, that means a lot. That validates kind of what our direction is, and we're kind of doing this for the next generation of leaders. Like most of these interviews, I mean, I love this part of what we do because, like you said, it's a conversation, and like I can sit here and talk with you forever. Um, and hopefully, I didn't miss too much. But is there anything else that you'd like to chat about?
I guess being first generation.
Talk about
Well,
being first generation American.
I guess it's a really big deal, especially when you go to an underserved school, because you get to go to this process alone, basically,
Hmm.
and you get to experience this. And well, most people probably think, oh, it's easy, just doing applications, this and that, but it's really not. And that's when you realize, wow, what's out there, it's like a lot bigger. Because I remember when I was filling out applications for the taxes part, oh my god, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I basically had to do everything at school where I was able to ask for help. And when I got home, it was like, even if I want to do it, I can't, because I don't have anyone that I can ask or anyone that can help me. And just say that regardless of the position you're in, whether you're an undocumented student, first generation, Latinx, or come from an underserved community or school, just keep striving for greatness, because it's all worth it at the end. It's gonna be hard, because it's gonna be hard, but it's worth it.
Great. Well put. Um, you mentioned a few things there that kind of triggered a couple of thoughts. And, um, you know, I know we talked about this earlier about being undocumented and what that means to you, like more philosophically, but um, just like logistically being undocumented, what are the legal limits? Like, can you vote? Can you go to UCLA? Can you, get a license? Like, what are, just completely just treat me as I'm the most ignorant person on earth. What what are some of the limitations that come with that?
You can't vote, unfortunately. You can get a license in California. I don't know about like other states. I don't know how that works. You can go to school, but it limits your financial aid, because the students who were born here, they get this thing called Pell Grant. One of my friends got, I think, 5,000 just from the Pell Grant, and well, I don't get that, so that's like a huge difference. I'm not able to work, so I'm not able to support myself when it comes to going to school. um, yeah, it's
So you
oh, also when it
you
comes
can't
to
legally work either.
no, you can't.
Hmm.
Programs too. When it comes to things out of state, it's more complicated. I remember last year I wanted to do this program that had to do with law, and I was so excited about it. And then I read the requirement, and it said, "Oh, citizenship," and I was like, "Oh, never mind."
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny because this country wants you to not be undocumented, and they want you to like get out of this situation you're in. Yet they stop you from progressing yourself enough to get out of the
yeah.
situation. It's like, what do you want me to do? Um, so what is left in your journey to become documented? And obviously, DACA is a big part. I assume you're a part of that, right? In that the right? Are you DACA?
No, I don't fall under DACA. That's
Oh,
for
you
people
don't.
who came before 2007. I came here 2015.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Um, so the ruling on that then doesn't even affect your status.
No, it doesn't.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
we still support the
Of
people,
course.
because we all share the same story.
Yeah, of course. Um, but so the path to become documented, I'm sorry, I kind of stopped your train of thought there. What is the path to become documented? What is left in this journey? How much more do you have to do?
The process can take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. You just don't know. I was supposed to go to court next month, but because of virus and everything, it was canceled. So now I don't really know when my next court is. And well, the next time I go, they can be like, oh, it's denied, it's accepted, or they can be like, oh, come back in 2 years. And you just don't really know when it's gonna end. So
Yeah. And do you have to come and say, look, I'm the Salutatorian. I got into UCLA. I'm a part of this organization. Does that help your case or does it not matter?
it, and that's what sucks, because they don't ask you about that. They just want to see that you're going to court. They don't care whether you're good at school or you're doing good things for the community. They don't even take it like into consideration.
Mm, that's such a shame.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it's more broken than I thought. Cool. Well, I'm glad you are out there in the world. I'm glad you're in this country. And I hope that we will, of course, blast this out everywhere we can so people can hear this story and see how important it is. And hopefully you inspire others to keep going down that path.
Thank you, and hopefully.
Thank you. Astrid, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again for talking with me today. And I do hope you stay in touch. We would love to be a resource any way we can. And we're going to be keeping track of how amazing and everything you're putting out into the world.
Thank you so much. I will definitely stay in touch.
Great. Thanks, Astrid.
Thank you.